My interviewee is a white middle-class male aged 25. With brown hair and blue eyes, he could be considered as being one of the least likely people to be discriminated against. I have focused this interview towards general female-male stereotypes. Let's start with something that's personal towards each other. We hold the unique position where we have both had the same job at the same location at different times. Do you remember what your pay as a shift supervisor was at Starbucks? At that store?
I don't know.
You don't?
No.
Do you have like an estimate of what it might be?
Uh,
Dollar range, like not into cents.
I'd say 15 to 16.
15 to 16?
Yeah.
Okay, I make 15.50, so that's about the same.
Yeah. I think I started at about 15.50, and then I think I worked there long enough and got a pay raise after that.
Okay, yeah. All right. Yeah. Same. All right. Along the lines of thinking about our workplace, do you think there are any jobs that only women or men can do?
And we're talking about our workplace being Starbucks.
Yes, yeah, but not that specific thing. Like, are there just any jobs in general, just like that men are only specific to men or only specific to women?
I mean, not in ability to do the job, right? Like, I think any job that, even though traditionally we would say, like, oh, that's a man's job, right? Like being a coal miner. Traditionally, we would be like, well, that's kind of a man's job. But there's no reason a woman couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for, like, any job.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Have you ever come across what we call the glass ceiling, which is the point where women stop being promoted, or where, like, anyone, I guess, stops being promoted? And do you think that this concept exists, or is it just, like, an urban myth?
I think it's definitely possible. I haven't experienced that exactly, but I've definitely experienced the kind of mentality that some higher up managers can have, where they only promote the people that they like, and that can not include a lot of different people for many different reasons.
Yeah. Do you think that the way a person is raised can affect their gender identity on a completely new subject?
The way that someone is raised can affect their gender identity.
Mm-hmm.
I would say probably.
Yeah.
Not really in my experience, but from my experience, I can say that the way you are raised has a heavy influence on your identity. Because there's kind of there's the social norms that you're trying to fit in with, especially when you're growing up and going through school. And then there's the kind of family norms that you're trying to fit in with as well.
Could you give me specifics for what those social norms or family norms might be?
Well, so, like at school, there's a different personality. Like when you're a kid going through school, you have a different personality around your friends than you do at home when you're talking to your parents. You know, you can be like this really sweet, innocent child when you're talking to your parents and you just know the right things to say, but when you're talking with your friends, it's like a completely different situation.
Yeah. I think that was definitely true for me, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it has more to do with like the lack of like maybe authority, or the lack of like being afraid you're going to get in trouble for the way that you act or the things that you do.
So do you think that a child who, like, was questioning maybe their gender identity would, or, like, the way that they act as, you know, a male or a female as they're growing up, do you think it would differ between, like, when they're with friends and when they're with family? Like, do you think they'd be their more realistic self with their friends or their family?
I think that right there is why it depends on the upbringing.
Yeah.
Because if you have a very open and inclusive family environment, like that, I mean, there wouldn't really be much of a difference for something that's like so close to you. But if you have more of a restrictive family setting, then your social setting is going to kind of be the outlet for those feelings and emotions that you don't get to express in your home life.
Yeah. Nice. Good answer. I like it. All right. Why do women generally live 5 years longer than men?
I think that's kind of the traditional, like, I don't really know how to say it. Not that men take more risks, but that it's more socially acceptable for men to take significant risk and not be judged by it if they fail, and get more support for it.
Okay.
Versus, like, I guess an example would be, you know, if I wanted to change careers to something completely different than what I'm thinking right now, I feel like I would be more supported by my friends and family than maybe you would if you right now decided that you didn't want to be an elementary school teacher.
Yeah,
I think
3 years into my
Exactly.
college schooling, yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that would tell you that that's not a great idea, and there's a lot of people that would just kind of, for me, say like, oh, okay, well, let us know what you need to support you.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. It's interesting to think why that might be the case. Yeah. So do you agree that women generally live longer than men?
Oh, I have no idea.
I mean, I guess you wouldn't know, right?
I've heard that fact before,
Yeah.
but like that's not really an opinion-based thing.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good
very,
point. Yeah,
it's a very factual
like an actual
and
fact. Yeah, okay. Well, along that lines, since women live 5 years longer than men, should they retire 5 years later? Why or why not?
I'm not sure why that would even be a thing. I can understand why that might be a question that someone has, but at the same time, I don't really think of retirement as being something that happens at a certain age. I think of retirement being a kind of state in your personal life. Like, you don't retire if you can't afford your lifestyle for the rest of your life. You only retire when you have saved enough money to be able to afford. When you're financially stable enough to retire. Like, it doesn't really have to do with. It has more to do with your financial stability.
Yeah, very true. I completely agree. All right. In what aspects of life is it easier being a woman? And in what aspects of life is it easier being a man?
Okay, so right off the bat, dating is a lot easier for women, I think.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Because the social norm is that men have to approach, and especially in these days, a man approaching you, looking to have a relationship for you, is now very frowned upon.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, what was it? Something that's easier for men.
Yeah.
Yes. I hate to say it, but pretty much most things.
I mean, I agree.
Like, to just be totally honest, as like a male, and especially as a white male, there's not really anything that is restricting me from doing something other than myself.
Very insightful.
Like, it's just, I don't go into any place, I don't go into any job, I don't go anywhere and think, oh, these people are going to look down on me because of my gender, sexual identity, or my race.
Yeah. I mean, I have to second guess, like, everywhere that I go because I'm a woman, and there are scary men that are trying to get on you everywhere that you go. I can't even pump gas without getting attacked.
See, like, that's kind of the hard part now for men, is because, like, you would be very uncomfortable. I'm assuming here, tell me if I'm wrong, but you would be very uncomfortable with, if you're pumping gas, like you said, and a 40-year-old man comes up to you. Exactly.
Like it would make me extremely uncomfortable.
Exactly, your face right there says it all.
Yeah.
But if I'm thinking into the future, and I'm thinking that I'm a 40-year-old man, and I see you, a cute young girl, pumping gas, I'm like, why not? Let's try. Let's give it a shot. The worst she can do is say no. But now, all of a sudden, it's not just me asking you if you would like to go out sometime. It's putting you in a situation where you could possibly feel very uncomfortable and feel really threatened.
Yeah, definitely. Cats. Especially in a situation like that. Yeah.
I think if it has anything to do with, like, trying to start a relationship, it just immediately becomes so much more difficult and so much more complicated.
Yeah. I mean, the minute that I see, honestly, a man, like, approaching me when I'm anywhere, I'm immediately just going to, like, turn around and go the other direction.
Well, and
especially because I'm in a long-term relationship. So I just am like, oh, no, like, I'm obviously, like, immediately deterred. So it just, like, it feels like harassment when you have to deal with it all the time.
And I think the thing that's, like, kind of in the back of my mind, if I ever was to approach someone and be interested in having a relationship with them, I'm not thinking about whether or not they're going to reject me. I'm thinking about whether or not I'm going to make them uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Boys and girls frequently play with different toys. Girls often have dolls, and boys often have toy guns or toy cars. Is that because they prefer different toys, or because we give them different toys? And does it matter?
I would say both. I think going back to one of your earlier questions, that kind of is where your upbringing can come into play. You know, if your parents, if you're a little girl and you want to play with your older brother's whatever toy he has, right? They could either steer you away from that and say, oh, no, that's not for you. Like, you should play with these things over here for whatever reason that they have. Or as a young boy, you know, looking at your older sister and she's hanging out with her friends and putting on their makeup, and you don't really see that as being a girl thing. You just kind of see it as being a fun thing.
Yeah.
And not really understanding why, like, that's not right for you. Understanding that it's not right for you to do it, but not understanding why that is.
Do you think it should be encouraged or discouraged to play with toys of, like, the opposite gender stereotype?
I don't think it should be either.
Okay.
I don't think you should encourage it, but you definitely shouldn't discourage it.
Okay.
I think it's more about just letting the child do whatever they want to do and just being happy that they want to do something and supporting that thing that they want to do.
Yeah, I agree. All right, now we're going to get serious for a second. Do you believe that girls or boys are more likely to have mental health issues or thoughts of suicide, and why? I do have an answer to this question. Like,
Is it there's an actual answer to this?
Yes. Yeah.
So the thing that I would say is, especially as a boy growing up who suffered with depression and other mental issues, I felt much more of a stigma about coming out about that than I felt like my, female classmates would have. I felt like it was much more acceptable for a female classmate to say, I feel anxious, I feel depressed, or I feel whatever, versus being a young boy where talking about your feelings wasn't really, I don't want to say it wasn't acceptable, but it wasn't received as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct. Yep, men have a much higher likelihood of suicide rates than women because they feel like they can't express their feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would believe that.
That's exactly correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's very interesting that you, from a, because like as a, woman perspective, I don't have that feeling. I've never experienced that. So it's interesting asking you that question and having that the answer is your
my experience.
Yeah,
my experience is
right
the answer.
away. Yeah. So that's very interesting. Okay, ending on a lighter note.
All right.
At which sports are men considered better than women, and at which sports are women considered better than men?
I mean, that sounds like a really factual answer. I don't know the factual answer.
I don't have a factual answer.
What I can tell you is that men, I believe, and this could be incorrect on my part as well, that men generally are stronger. Men, because of their physiology, have more muscle mass. They are stronger. They can run faster. They can throw farther. And that's why we have male and female leagues versus trying to allow male and female players to play together. I think it doesn't make men better at the sport. I think it makes it a different sport. I think when you look at, like, men's basketball, it's much more about who is stronger, who can shoot better, versus, like, female basketball, where it's kind of much more about the mental game.
Yeah.
Where it's more about setting up your plays, and just kind of the things that you do to set up and go through the actions and not necessarily the actions themselves. I don't know if that really makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm following you, yeah.
I
don't know that much about sports, so I'm kind of following you.
I mean, I don't know a whole lot either about, like, the difference between men and women playing sports. I mean, I guess if I were to talk about reffing soccer when I was younger, I would ref boys soccer and I would ref girls soccer. And there were very interesting things that you would experience between the boys and the girls at the same age level of play. So, high school varsity team, boys, very aggressive, uh, very prone to anger. Your pretty much first thing that you're thinking about as a referee when you're refereeing the boys is to curb retaliation. Because if I push you a little bit and it doesn't get called, all of a sudden you're going to come back and you're going to push me twice as hard as I pushed you last time.
Okay, yeah.
And you're going to assume that doesn't get called. And if it gets called, you're going to be really pissed off, and then you're going to come back at me again.
Yeah.
Versus when I refed kind of the female girls, where this sounds really dumb, but they hold grudges. I
That doesn't surprise me.
cannot tell you the number of times that I had two teams that hated each other because they played each other 4 years ago, and some incident happened, right? Somebody tripped someone, somebody shoved somebody down, someone got really angry and went over the top, and that incident doesn't go away.
Yeah.
And they're still playing off of that incident versus the guys who are playing off of the incident that happened 5 seconds ago.
Yeah, that's very accurate for a woman. Yeah, I can see that.
But in terms of like actual gameplay, I noticed that girls who play soccer specifically, because that's what I have experience with, were much better at knowing where to pass the ball, when to pass the ball, where to stand to be open, where to stand to block the opponent, and pretty much everything that has to do with the game that's not physically related.
Okay.
Right? Other than your speed, how fast you can pass the ball, and how fast you can shoot the ball, I would say that the females were better.
Oh, right. Well, it was nice talking to you, so thank you for sitting with me in my interview.
Of course. Thank you very much for having me.
Right. And,